Good evening. I'm going to call to order the City Council special meeting of September 24th. There is only one agenda item for this meeting this evening. It is ID 0421, the proposed 2020 budget, and I will be making a presentation to Council and the community this evening. Before I start, I just want to let any of those that are watching from home know that I really appreciate all of our staff that showed up this evening to be a part of hear the presentation as well, and in particular want to call out those crazy night warriors who have been putting this together for quite a while, working weekends and evenings. Special thank you to my finance team and for all the work that the directors put into feeding in the great information that's in this year's budget. You guys are fantastic. You did a really great job. But this particular budget presentation is like most others, not the most sexy thing I'm ever going to deliver. It is a little longer than usual, so I have added a PowerPoint presentation with some of the key information on there. So hang on, it's about 15 minutes, and I think the team has put together a really good narrative that I hope introduces the budget in a way that allows the start of some great conversations. So thank you for coming tonight. And before we start, I'd just like to say that Councilmember Goodman has an excused absence this evening. So we have 6 of our council here this evening. So Issaquah community members, City Council, and employees, tonight I am pleased to present the proposed 2020 budget. Each year, I am fortunate enough to stand before you and present our financial plan for the upcoming year. The 2020 proposed budget will allow the city to continue to provide high-quality services to Issaquah residents, with a focus on preserving and protecting public safety, enhancing investments in our parks and open space, and improving transportation mobility, our community's #1 priority. In total, this budget contains $39 million in funds for high-priority capital investments identified in the recently adopted 2020-2025 Capital Improvement Plan, including the installation of a new traffic signal on Southeast 43rd Way and Providence Point, improvements to Central Park, and critical investments in our water utility. Meanwhile, I'm also presenting a reality-based budget that will require some challenging decisions in the months ahead. Our mission, reflected in the newly adopted strategic plan, is to foster a safe, vibrant, livable, and inclusive community through effective stewardship and quality public services. As we built the proposed budget, this mission was in the forefront of our decision-making. Effective stewardship requires us to take action now to ensure our financial sustainability, both for the coming year and for future budgets. The main challenge in preparing the 2020 proposed budget is a weakening general fund revenue picture. In 2007 and 2018, general fund expenditures were supported by a relatively steady $50 million in revenues, which was fueled by strengths in sales tax revenue. The 2019 adopted budget assumed that sales tax and other revenues would propel overall revenues higher than in 2017 and 18, allowing for an expansion of city services. Those assumptions, however, are not materializing, and revenues are projected to end 2019 and to continue into 2020 at lower levels than what the city has experienced in previous years. The single biggest cause for this weakening revenue picture is a drop in the city's sales tax revenues, which are driven by declines in the retail, trade, and construction sectors. This declining revenue picture creates a significant challenge for the city in sustaining the current mix of general fund supported services to residents. Our 2019 adopted budget earmarked $53 million in general fund expenditures. Assuming the same expenditure level in 2020, this creates a $5.2 million gap. In other words, projected revenues are not sufficient to sustain existing services. As a result, the 2020 proposed budget totals $143.6 million, including $50.3 million for the general fund. Overall, this proposal is down from 2019's adopted $144.9 million budget. The general fund is down nearly $3 million relative to 2019. In the near term, this new fiscal reality requires the city to carefully evaluate belt-tightening options, as well as new revenues, to allow us to sustain important city services and start to meet the priorities outlined in the city's newly adopted strategic plan. Just as we carefully reviewed revenues to prepare the forecast presented to the City Council in August, we conducted a similar review of expenditures in preparing the 2020 proposed budget. Based on this review, the city will leave 7 currently vacant positions unfilled in 2020 to help offset the budget shortfall. In determining which positions to hold vacant, we prioritize filling positions that provide critical or mandated services and minimize operational impacts. We also align various account lines with actual expenditure trends. All city departments carefully reviewed their budgets to identify spending that could be reduced, including funds for travel as well as training and supplies. Reductions also include capturing savings in professional services by eliminating one-time funding that was allocated in 2019 for special projects and not reallocating those dollars in 2020 for new projects. The proposed budget also reduces the amount awarded for community fund grants from nearly $105,000 provided in 2019 to $35,000 in 2020. These funds have been traditionally allocated to a variety of community organizations to assist with capacity building activities, such as staff training. As the city takes reductions to its department budgets in response to these projected budget shortfalls, the proposed budget looks to these organizations also to make similar reductions. Beyond the belt-tightening strategies, this budget also scales back a limited number of services. In deciding which services to reduce, our team looked to minimize the impact on residents. These reductions include returning certain park services to historical levels. For 2019, the city utilized the increase in projected revenues to expanded community center and Julius Bone pool hours. In light of the city's weakening revenue picture, this budget returns some of those hours to the pre-2019 levels. The community center will open at 6 a.m. rather than 5 a.m., and the pool and the community center will both close to the general public on Sundays, but be available to rent for private use. I also propose slowing the rate of growth on salary and benefits. Traditionally, the city allocated an annual cost of living adjustment, or COLA, at a rate near the Consumer Price Index, which is currently in excess of 2%. Given the city's budget challenges for 2020, a lower COLA of 1% is proposed for non-represented employees. The budget also starts to implement the results of the recently completed classification and compensation study, which you will review further tonight. As part of the implementation of this study, the budget reflects a new salary schedule that will provide 3% increases between salary steps for non-represented employees rather than the 5% that previous salary schedules reflected. Finally, the city is seeing growth rates in medical benefit costs for 2020 that are significantly lower than in past years. Previously, and as is typical with our peers, it was common to see these cost increases by more than 8% per year. For 2020, the city's medical benefit costs are increasing by a modest 2%. Along with expenditure reductions, this budget also recommends leveraging revenue tools. Simply put, city revenues are not growing at a rate sufficient to sustain existing services, resulting in structural shortfalls. For 2020, I am recommending that the city increase the rates on some select revenues to better align with nearby cities and to generate needed revenues for Issaquah. First, I propose applying the banked property tax capacity, which is the amount of property tax capacity that has accumulated over time when a taxing jurisdiction has charged below the maximum rate allowable. This will generate an estimated $138,000 in additional property tax revenue for the city. The cost of this increase to the average Issaquah taxpayer is $10 to $11 per year. In addition, I recommend increasing utility tax rates. Issaquah assesses a 6% utility tax, as allowed under state law, to utilities not operated by the city, including electricity, natural gas, solid waste, and telephone. Most cities that assess a utility tax charge the same rate for eligible utilities. Issaquah does not. For cable and city-run utilities, water, sewer, and stormwater, the city charges lower rates. The proposed budget includes raising the utility tax rate on these utilities to 6% as well. This change is expected to generate $1.9 million in revenues for the general fund and result in an estimated $14.10 increase in the monthly utility tax charges to the average City of Issaquah ratepayer. This budget also recommends a series of increases in a variety of parks fees, which align with market trends. The most notable of these charges is to introduce a resident and non-resident rate structure to the users of Julius Bone Pool. By offering a continued discount to Issaquah residents, but not maintaining the same level of discount to non-residents. In addition, the budget recommends increases in the rates charged for the Senior Gold Pass. Currently, the city charges seniors $25 per year for a Gold Pass, which gives seniors full access to all services offered at the community center and Julius Bone Pool. These rates are highly subsidized by the general fund. Under this proposal, the cost of a Gold Pass would increase to $120 per year for residents and $144 per year for non-residents. The proposed budget also increases a number of community center fees. Together, these revenue increases will generate $120,000 in new revenues for the general fund. While our discount programs will continue to make our parks programs accessible to those with low incomes. We do not take these proposed revenue increases and their impact on our community lightly. As a result, our team is also planning to promote existing programs that provide low-income seniors discounts on utilities and property tax bills, and to explore opportunities in 2020 to expand programs that help mitigate the cost to our low-income community members. The budget also leverages a number of other external revenues to sustain existing services, including expanded cost allocations for grants, as well as other funding sources that can support general fund services. Collectively, these revenue tools, along with growth in other smaller revenues, will generate roughly $2.5 million toward balancing our 2020 general fund budget. While the proposed budget leverages new revenues and reduces costs to close the general fund budget gap, it also allocates funds to support growing costs for existing services and expand into new priority areas, including some of those identified in the newly adopted strategic plan. Of highest priority in 2020, the proposed budget allocates $250,000 in the general fund dollars to conduct a review of city services in order to align with available revenues and community priorities. This review will allow us to take a comprehensive and systematic look at the full mix of services provided by the city, to develop priorities around those services that are mandatory and those that are discretionary, and to identify services that are currently being subsidized that may be supported by direct revenues, such as fees and charges for service, and opportunities to deliver services more efficiently at a lower cost. I see this as a major work program item for the next 2 years and look forward to engaging the council and the community as this work unfolds. Another top priority for 2020 is to continue the work started in 2019 to transform and modernize the city's financial management infrastructure. After my first year as mayor, it was made clear to me that the city for many years has not had access to the financial data needed to transparently communicate information about the city's fiscal position to decision makers and to the public that we serve. This challenge has been building over many years and will take time to correct. However, I am pleased with the progress we have made so far, and I'm confident that we will make more progress in 2020. To help with this effort, the proposed budget designates more than $1 million in capital dollars supported by real estate, excise tax, or REIT revenues, and $200,000 in operating funds from the general fund. Our 2020 work plan includes a reimplementation of Munis, the city's financial management system, updates to the city's financial policies and procedures, and a continued comprehensive review of all city funds. This work will result in improved timeliness and greater clarity and transparency in the financial data we're able to provide to the community and to council, and to align with our strategic plan. We also plan to preserve existing service for all of the city's public safety functions, including sustaining our staffing levels for the police department, increasing the amount allocated for our fire services contract with Eastside Fire and Rescue, and increasing our legal services budgets to account for upward cost pressures. The city will also continue to work in 2020 to locate a temporary fire emergency aid station in North Issaquah, using dollars from the mitigation fund. I also propose to designate more than $3.2 million in capital funds to support investments in our parks and to acquire additional open space, which is reflected in our park strategic plan. In addition, the city will upgrade and replace exercise equipment at the community center. Another top work plan priority for 2020 is investing in our transportation infrastructure. The proposed budget leverages city funds and grant dollars to invest nearly $15.6 million in transportation capital investments, including the new traffic signal at Southeast 43rd Way and Providence Point, planning for the Newport Way Northwest improvements, and the Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized improvement project. Our team will also continue to work with the council in 2020 to develop a dedicated transportation revenue proposal to put to Issaquah voters in late 2020, which also supports a major goal of the strategic plan, mobility. In 2019, the city began important work to set its priorities through the adoption of the strategic plan and improvements to its financial reporting capabilities. Now, as you begin to explore this budget document, please take note of the work plan items that are directly tied to the strategic plan as we start implementation in 2020, including testing new strategies for community engagement, building a database and contact list for inventoried lower-cost multifamily housing, reviewing and providing direction on new population and job growth targets, developing policies and potential codes for missing middle housing, enhancing the business retention and expansion program for new small business services, building recruitment efforts to attract new employers, implementing improvements to the employee experience, fostering development, organizational values and connection, developing a customer service standards, and configuring GIS mapping with 3D software. Meanwhile, there is much more in the preliminary budget for you to discuss and deliberate on than the highlights I mentioned tonight. As the council begins to deliberate the 2020 budget, I look forward to engaging a robust conversation about how the city aligns its budget priorities with available revenues. While this may be a challenging budget season with hard decisions ahead, I'm confident that our team, including our dedicated city council, our hardworking staff, and our passionate community members, find a way to meet the needs of our community. Thank you for listening this evening. And just for the information of those attending, council will receive a hard copy version and an electronic, hard copy version, I'm looking at Autumn right now, or just an electronic version, okay, this evening. And I think, Tisha, if you can slip back one slide. I just want to make sure that those that are here in attendance or at home realize that the next steps here are council budget presentations will be beginning on October 7th at 7:15 p.m. in council chambers. That will be occurring after the regular city council meeting, which has an early start time that night of 6 p.m. And we are hopeful that the council deliberations will lead to an adoption of a budget either in late November or the beginning of December. So that concludes the portion of the city council special meeting, and we will be adjourning, and the council will be staying because they have a study session this evening afterwards. So the meeting is over at 6:19. Thank you.